Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team get together to talk about all the things with world building and characters and setting and video games, because it's the thing we like to do together. We lore together.
Yes, this is episode 21.
Yeah.
And we may be a husband and wife team, but we also have a newborn here. You may hear him in the background. It is okay. He will not make too much noise.
He's adorable. Just imagine he's being adorable in the background when you hear him. I feel like that first episode, he might have been in and out for a good bit.
Yeah, he was a little irritable.
Yeah. That's what happens when you poop your pants, you know?
If you enjoy this podcast and would like to support it and get early access to episodes, our mini episodes, as well as our bi-weekly streams where you get to watch one of us flail about in a game.
Flail.
You can do that at patreon.com/loretogether. If you would like to contact us to discuss anything about the games we cover or give us ideas for new games or just gaming in general or other stuff that's lore related or story related, you can do that on Twitter at loretogether or by email at the address loretogether@gmail.com.
Yeah. We love hearing from you guys, so please feel free to reach out. We love it.
And please, if you are able to on whatever platform you're listening on, rate and review us.
Please do. I know that we have, particularly on iTunes and Podchaser, you have the ability to review us and hopefully tell the world how much you love our musings. So please do that. I hope you love our musings too. We just love knowing that you guys listen, so thank you for that.
And this episode, we are continuing our look at Nuka Cola post-war in the Fallout universe.
Yes. So everybody knows the reason Fallout is because there has been Fallout. So we are talking about essentially what happened to the legacy of Nuka Cola. If you want to listen to episode 20 to figure out what the pre-bombs dropping Nuka Cola history was like, feel free to go there. We talk about basically the foundation of what makes Nuka Cola what it is, especially with the Nuka World DLC. Now we're going to talk about, you know, the kind of the history of it here. I mean, everybody can find unopened bottles of Nuka Cola and its variant flavors throughout all of the wastelands. I mean, any game that was a Fallout game has
Nuka Cola.
Has a Nuka Cola of some sort and variant flavors of Nuka Cola. So, and its competitors like Sunset Sarsaparilla and Vim and, you know, other drinks out there. So
it's weird because we're talking about having soda in the games and stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's just, you know, it reminds me of sometimes you would have games that have product placement in them.
Yes.
And it just reminds me, do you remember 7-Up did caffeinated 7-Up called DNL? So
No.
it was like a 7-Up, but
Oh my
upside
God.
down. And I remember, I think it was SSX3.
Oh,
Had
that would be a game that
giant
would have
billboards with it and stuff, and it was just, it's so weird to go play it now. It's like watching Independence Day and seeing a Fruitopia machine.
Oh my gosh, Fruitopia. I drank the out of that, and it's probably half the reason why my cavities are still as bad as they are. But yes, so what we're going to go is continue on as to, we all know that there's a history of like people collect the caps, and now that's money and everything like that. But
It's a finite resource.
Yes, but we're going to talk about essentially the history that stretches out basically past when the bombs dropped, that's specifically related to Nuka Cola Corporation.
Okay.
So not just, you know, you found some trash and here it is. No, this is going to be what Nuka Cola did that proceeded to quote unquote survive after the bombs dropped.
Speaking of trash in around Nuka Cola, Nuka World has so much trash everywhere.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So it's kind of harkening back to the 1950s before we believed we had to clean up after ourselves. This is the era, and in the 50s and the 60s, you'd have a picnic in the park and you'd leave your sandwich wrappings and your paper napkins and everything behind because you figured somebody else was going to clean it up. Trash was everywhere. And nobody picked up after themselves quite in the same way. And I think that's kind of what they're hearkening to.
Wait, you're saying that you would go to a picnic and you would not even put your stuff in a garbage bin?
Right. Oh, nature will take care of it. Yeah. That's why by the time the 70s came around, there was a big push to actually be more conservative with trash. Because not only was it bad for the environment, it just made everything look, dare I say, trashy.
Oh my God.
So, yeah.
I didn't set her up for that, I swear.
There's an episode of Mad Men where Don Draper and his family go for a picnic and they just leave their trash. They literally make sure there's a shot where they just leave all their trash behind when they're done with the picnic.
The only thing I know about Mad Men is that Don Draper is supposed to be D.B. Cooper, I think.
That was a theory. They never confirmed that, but that should have been it, to be perfectly honest. I really wish they ended it on that, because then that whole intro sequence would have made a lot more sense.
I think what I heard, this is a digression of lore, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Is what I heard is that was the idea, and then the fan community figured it out, so they changed it.
Yeah. They should have just let it be what it was. I wish they could have kept it. There's nothing wrong with a fan figuring out the right answer to something and then just rewarding them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do that in my games all the time. If people figure out what the answer is going to be, I let them feel smart. Because not everybody can figure out, but if you figure it out, great, you were on the same brain. It doesn't even necessarily mean you're smart. You're just on the same brain wavelength as the creator a lot of the times. I wish they had kept that storyline in there. But enough about D.B. Cooper. Let's talk about, first of all, the Beverageers. Yeah. So when we last left the Beverageers, they were in a bunker working on Project Cobalt and actually had some success.
Wait, they're still locked in the bunker.
Well, we'll get into that. The Beverageers found themselves survivors in the bunker where their research had continued, the safety protocols locking them in when the bombs dropped. Ruth Leavitt, also known as Kate Leavitt, was the most upset by this, since she had given her resignation at the beginning of October, giving a month's notice. Both Meacham and Brad Burton were upset by this, the former on a personal level, and the latter due to how it would affect his earnings. In fact, he made sure that she was going to be blacklisted in her industry entirely. She would not be able to get an organic chemist job ever again.
I didn't know that was a singular industry, but okay.
I think in this world where, capitalism is run amok per se, that he's got the connections that any other place that would want an organic chemist with her specialty, he can basically write her off.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Despite working in the same facilities as her peers, she hadn't touched Project Cobalt since she had voiced her concerns and worked on Nuka Cola Quantum, the flavoring. The researchers tried to convince her to stay on the team, even to the point of Meacham trying to intimidate her. And part of the reason she wanted to leave was because she didn't feel comfortable flavoring quantum with a radioactive isotope. So, and especially with the test subjects dying, and then even still having the glowing pea, like she didn't feel comfortable with that.
This isn't like using natural banana, which are radioactive,
right,
in your flavoring.
No,
this is like
we are
poisoning people.
It is a literal isotope, as you mentioned in the last episode. It's strontium-90. It's an actual radioactive isotope that's part of like modern day nuclear waste.
Right.
So after weeks of back and forth with the other Beverageers, because Medford and Bennell, who we mentioned before, were also trying to get her to stay on the team, especially because, again, her expertise was second to none. She's like one of the top organic chemists in the world. To lose her was to lose a lot of brain power. After weeks and back and forth with the other Beverageers, the bombs sealed her fate. It was by chance that she found herself stuck longer than she could have imagined living with her fellow researchers. She was going to be gone by the end of October, and the end of October essentially never came.
Right.
So, Meacham was now convinced that he had to rush and complete work on quantum for the military, even faster to protect himself from the invading Chinese forces. The other two researchers reacted in their own ways. Bennell joined Meacham in sinking into his work as an escape from the existential dread he now faced. Medford couldn't find the work distracting enough and hung himself 2 weeks later in the dorms, having only meekly followed Meacham's lead originally.
Jeez.
Yeah, so he basically was like, well, everything...
World's over.
The world's over. Why am I here? Finally, Levitt's morals clashed with Meacham's determination, and as she tried to open the door of the lab to leave, she was shot by Meacham. She's literally about to leave, and he's like, I can't let you do that, because he's paranoid. He thinks the Chinese are going to come in if she opens the door, or she's going to sell the secrets or something.
Never happened.
Yeah. So. And literally, he in the recording, you hear it. He goes, oh, and she goes, oh, what are you going to do that? You're just going to shoot me? Go to hell, Rex. And then he shoots her. Like, he just does not hesitate. He and Bennell tried to get lost in their work, but as the months passed, only Meacham was convinced that the quantum project was still needed by the military. Almost a year after they were sealed into the research facility, Bennell finally... I'm seeing Bennell and Bennell. My apologies. It's same with like Leavitt and Levitt, like I mentioned in the last episode.
Medici.
Yeah. Bennell finally tried to escape on his own through a radiation overflow tunnel. Meacham shot at him but never knew that he hit well enough to have fatally injured Bennell. Meacham stayed in the lab toiling away on Quantum until his dying day, which actually wasn't soon after that because since he followed Bennell through the radiation tunnel, he got poisoned as well.
Jeez.
So
Everyone's dead.
he left behind a quantum-enhanced ammunition as well as the plans for quantum-enriched grenades and like little mini nukes, which were actually being used on the battlefield at the time. But it would be centuries before anyone would be able to make use of it. So he literally, like within days of essentially hitting the last researcher under his purview, he finishes his work and dies right there on the table right next to his notes. Yeah, and Bennell did make it through part of the tunnels only to die in the tunnels. So you can find almost everybody's corpses where they passed away.
Including the guy who hung himself.
Yeah, apparently they didn't clean that up. You'd have to exit the bunker to bury him. So
is he still hanging?
No, the skeleton's not hanging.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought he was still hanging, and I'm like...
No, the noose is still in the room, which I think if I was living in a dormitory and I could see somebody's noose that they killed themselves with, I would have cut that down. That can't be good for morale. But I guess you've got Crazy Meacham, you've got Meek Bennell, and then you've got Leavitt, who I guess, for all I know, she was so steadfast and almost spiteful to Meacham, she might have been like, well, I'll leave it there so he remembers what he did, essentially. So that's me theorizing. I don't have any notes. That's just if I wrote the story, that's how I'd see it going down. Topside, the Nuka Cola legacy had not been entirely forgotten either. Prior to the bombs being dropped, the employees of the Kitty Kingdom section hatched a plan in case the Sino-American War became too hot or too local. Oswald the Outrageous led the planning alongside his girlfriend, Rachel Watkins. Rachel was a woman with an organic chemistry background who volunteered for the position of Princess Cherry in a performance of Kitty Kingdom. She actually wanted to know the culture of the company before being hired as a beverageer. So the two helped organize the significant undertaking of supplying the staff tunnels with preserved foods, tools, lumbers, and other survival items. And they actually talked with a lot of the other employees in Kitty Kingdom, and everybody agreed this is where we're gonna bunker down if things get too serious. And they sealed the deal with a shot. It was like a whole community already established because everybody was kind of freaked out. The war was getting real.
Yeah, Kitty Kingdom is one of the ones I have done, and so I kind of know where this one's going.
On the day the bombs dropped, their co-worker Mitchell, who was supposed to have all the weapons, had not returned. As the sirens rang out in the park, the employees went down to the now stocked underground. Some of them were able to bring in a few fleeing park attendees in the process, but not a lot, just a few. Knowing there would be fighting up above, all those who made it into the tunnels hunkered down. And a week later, Mitchell arrived with a full stock of weapons, food, chemicals, and so much more. With blood on his shirt, he claimed he just needed the time to get all the items before heading back. He never explained how the blood got on his shirt. So, meanwhile, the Safari Adventureland had been through its own tumultuous time. On the day the bombs dropped, the activists of the Animal Friends and Defenders had captured one of the scientists in charge of the cloning facility, Dr. Hine. Now, if you remember from last episode, Animal Friends and Defenders are essentially their version of PETA, and thought the cloning was inhumane, which, yeah, when your cloning facility will make miscloned animals
kind of bad.
Suffer and explode, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So they had fooled Dr. Hine into thinking an animal needed to be treated at the Angry Anaconda exhibit and was holding him.
The petting zoo?
No, there's actually, I think it's like a roller coaster, but they would have animals travel back and forth, so it would have been injured in that area, and it wouldn't have been the first time that Dr. Hine had to do something like this, according to his notes. So these 4 accomplices were holding him there when security locked down the whole Safari Adventureland under the pretense of a structural issue. So they didn't say it was a hostage situation. They just said there's a structural issue. We're securing Safariland. The activists insisted that Brad Burton would come to negotiate with them in person.
Well, that's not happening.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Dr. Hine's talking to them like, I'll talk to him myself and we can figure this out. There's nothing inhumane with what I'm doing. Meanwhile, Dr. Hine's notes, he was bragging about even when he was drunk, he could make a spliced anteater with 8 giraffe legs and scales. And yeah, he was trying to claim that he was ethical, but he was like, well, whenever something can't survive, we ethically put it down. Like that was his logic.
So, but at this point, Brad Burton's a head in a jar.
Yes. By this point, we know that Brad Burton has beheaded himself to be immortal. Yeah. Again, that's in episode 20, guys. Spoilers.
We should have titled this podcast Spoilers.
Spoilers. So when the bombs dropped, all 4 of Hein's captors perished with him. They were like in some trailer, and they just all died either due to a bomb dropping or more likely due to the fallout. However, one scientist did survive the bomb droppings, Darren McDermott. McDermott had the good fortune of becoming a ghoul after the bombs dropped. Now, for those of you who don't know what ghouls are, because we haven't touched on this yet, in the Fallout universe, there is a way for your body to survive radiation if you have the right fortitude, and that's why you become a ghoul. But you look kind of like a rotting flesh humanoid, essentially. You lose most of your hair, your voice gets really gravelly, rougher skin. Sometimes you could see a little bit the insides. A lot of the things that have cartilage fall off.
Yeah.
Things like that. And in fact, McDermott, he talks in a journal about his transformation process, and it suggests that it's not that he's rotting from the inside out, but it's like his body is activating something to fortify himself from the radiation. It's fighting back from the radiation, which is why his skin's getting thicker and it's losing other parts of itself. It's an interesting suggestion into the lore.
And most ghouls, from my recollection, are normal, quote-unquote, people.
They're humans.
They're humans.
Yeah.
But a percentage also go feral, like it changes their brain.
We'll get into what that means actually pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or at least in this episode, maybe not pretty soon. Using the cloning technology in the park, he was able to make himself enough food to survive. So he literally could take a piece, he would find like a piece of steak, use the DNA in there, clone a cow, slaughter the cow, eat most of the cow, and then the stuff he couldn't eat, he would use it to clone another cow.
I mean, that works.
Yeah. McDermott then decided that his life's purpose would be to protect the cloning machine from anyone to misuse it. He hoped to continue his research in order to repopulate the world with animals and even other humans. This would cause him to stay isolated because he felt like he had to protect his machine from any... Once he realized there were scavengers, he was like, I got to make sure nobody else takes this technology and does something dastardly with it.
And I'm sure the isolation has left him completely and utterly mentally sound.
Yeah, something like that, I guess. He was sad about his predicament and feared for the loss of his sanity, but felt a sacrifice was necessary. He, talking to himself and everything, it wasn't good for him. Throughout the years, McDermott would cautiously come up for food and supplies. During one of these trips, he found the body of a super mutant. Intrigued, McDermott took a sample of the super mutant's DNA in order to add it to the library sequences in the cloning machine.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Well, he thought it was something that naturally mutated in the wild, and he was like, oh, this is really fascinating. And he even labeled it a certain number and all of that.
For those who don't know, a super mutant is basically a human that has been injected with a virus through a government program.
It was a government program, yes.
And basically turns them into giant hulking mutants.
Right. And they were kind of...
Also all female, I think?
You were more likely to convert if you were female.
Oh, okay.
If I remember correctly, but not all of them were female. And some of them are dumb, but not all of them. So.
Most seem to be of lower intelligence, but some are really dumb and some are really smart.
The survivors in Kitty Kingdom spent several weeks underground before they felt it was safe enough to head topside, knowing that there would be many clashes above. When they finally left the tunnels, they got to work making formal accommodations in the park and fortify their security. Literally, when they were finishing up their work, a radioactive tornado, complete with green lightning, swept by. Some people were pulled up into the whirlwind, unable to find shelter in time. A number of others died afterwards due to radiation exposure, with the impromptu doctor, Rachel, unable to save them and just making sure they didn't die alone. She was called the doctor because she was the closest to it, but she's an organic chemist. Like, she can't...
Right.
She's not a medical doctor. The rest were to become ghouls, the long-living radiation-exposed individuals found throughout the wasteland since the bombs dropped. So... Again, just like what happened with McDermott, everybody else who survived that radioactive storm became ghouls.
There's a lot of ghouls in Nuka World, I think.
It's kind of situational. Not every part of the park has ghouls, but the parts of the park that weren't, and these ghouls are a little different than, like, McDermott became a ghoul when the bombs dropped. All these people became ghouls after a storm full of
tornado.
Yeah, a storm full of radioactive waste comes by and ravages the park.
And Galactic Zone has no ghouls because there was no people there. I don't think it was all robots.
It was all robots. There's not really, and it was a very different situation. Like Kitty Kingdom had a bunch of people have a plan and hunker down. McDermott just happened to be lucky. Everybody else perished. And in
Right.
fact, in his journals, he's like the last known survivor of Safari Adventureland. So both Rachel and Oswald survived to become ghouls, and Oswald became the leader of the group. Rachel continued as the quote unquote doctor since she was the most qualified survivor. Within the first year, their defenses were tested, and they were successful after the first few attacks of roving gangs. A year after the bombs were dropped, the water supply in the park became tainted with the radiation. Some of the survivors correctly guessed that this radiation was related to the bottling plant of Nuka Cola Quantum. However, none of them confirmed this and did not attempt to fix this situation since they all figured they were now immune to the radiation anyway, which is correct.
Right.
This came in handy years later when a large group attacked the survivors in the park. With quick thinking, one of them, actually Rachel's best friend Fran, realized that they could take on any intruders with the lawn sprayers throughout the park and then just use them.
With the what sprayers? That
They had like water sprayers throughout
Water
the park.
sprayers, okay.
Yeah, for like the lawn and everything. This combined with the scare tack, and I think they might have actually been part of the amusements too, if I'm remembering that part of the game right. This combined with the scare tactics of running around with clown makeup kept the park intruders free for a long time.
Yeah, I remember that it was quite a pain in the butt to get through all the radiation sprayers.
Right. Over the years, Oswald began to develop magical powers. He became what is now called a glowing one, a ghoul with special abilities that can heal other ghouls, as well as attack with a radiation blast. He would use this to help with scaring off intruders or killing them if necessary. And he found it out by accident. Like, he noticed he had some magical powers, and then there was an attack, and he used it, which I think is actually a little while later. After a century of success, a new problem arose amongst the ghouls of Kitty Kingdom, called the Affliction. Unbeknownst to them, the survivors slowly started to become feral, ghouls who have forgotten all their humanity. One by one, the group would become aggressive and crave any flesh they could get their hands on, which meant they would also start, sometimes even attacking each other. As more of the survivors changed, they looked to Rachel to help find a cure. She tried her best, but she only survived to see her best friend Fran become feral. Rachel at first became bitter about staying in their home. However, her attitude changed when the still cognizant survivors realized that the feral ghouls would be useful in attacking the intruders in the park. They got attacked. They were actually stuck in one of the amphitheaters in Kitty Kingdom, and suddenly out of the woodworks, the feral ghouls came and attacked the intruders. So then they realized, oh, not only are they still our family and friends that are close to us, but they can still be useful in helping defend our home. Yeah. This combined with Oswald's glowing one powers caused him to be a formidable force against raiders and other dangers. Rachel finally convinced Oswald to let her venture out and find a cure for the affliction. He stayed behind to watch over the group, who by the time the player encounters them in the Nuka World DLC, they've all become feral. Oswald's the only one left, and he's still waiting for Rachel to come back. However, at that point, two tragic things have occurred. Rachel had found out from traveling the Commonwealth that there was no cure.
Right.
She couldn't do anything to bring her friends back to what they once were. In addition, Rachel began to become feral before she could head back to Nuka World. She recorded a note for Oswald in case he still survives and ends her own life on her own terms. And that's pretty much the state of Kitty Kingdom.
Right. I do remember that actually. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really sad, and it's a really sweet note. And you can hear, it's really scary because it's like in a bad zombie movie. You can hear her fighting against becoming feral before she shoots herself in the head for the note for Oswald. Around the same time Rachel was out looking for a cure, McDermott realized that scavengers and worse were trying to enter the park. Wanting to protect the cloning machine, the doctor used the super mutant gene and spliced it with an alligator and a chameleon to make what he called a gator claw.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
The hope was that he could create enough to protect the park and therefore any proof of the cloning machine.
Because the gator claw is totally not at all proof that there's something weird going on.
Well,
It is a world where there's a giant creatures and everything, and so fair, but
yeah, I mean, I think he looked at the super mutant. He's like, well, this can't be any weirder than the super mutant. So,
fair. All right.
yeah. However, the creation of the creature turned out to be a mistake. Not only could the gator claw not be tamed and therefore wouldn't listen to any of his commands, But the cloning machine ended up malfunctioning. It started constantly producing more gator claws. McDermott was injured in the process of producing these creatures. He ran up to the surface and ran into the strange individual Sito, a man who was raised by ghoul-rillas. Now, he's not somebody we're going to focus on in this instance, but essentially it's like a Tarzan situation with Sito.
Okay.
He essentially, as a little kid, was orphaned, found by these radiated gorillas, ghoul-rillas, as they are called in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you meet him, he speaks like Tarzan, but he knows his
jeez.
name as Sito.
Okay.
Yeah. So McDermott gave a warning about the source of the danger before passing, and in leaving the clues in the hands of Sito, who was unable to act on the information he had. Sito's not literate. He barely understands modern world conventionalities. Sito does at least give McDermott a proper burial. You can actually find a little gravestone with his glasses, in part of Safariland. But then that's the end. I mean, essentially, the lasting vestige of Safari Adventureland is this machine that keeps making gator claw after gator claw after gator claw in the park. There are other irradiated animals that are in the park. You find a Yao Gua, you've got the ghoul-rillas, you've got a couple other things going on. But really, it's just trying to fight through these gator claws. So that's how it's left by the time you get into that part of Nuka World. One last vestige has not been accounted for. The immortal John Caleb Bradburton. He still survives underneath his office at Nuka Cola World. Alone sits the death of his assistant Peyton on the day the bombs dropped. He stays there as the years turn to decades into centuries. He stares at the same wall every day, realizing the quote-unquote devil's bargain he made back in 2077. If only he had originally believed legacy was the true way to immortality back then. And that's pretty much, after the bombs drop, what's really left of the Nuka Cola Corporation. Most of it, at least at Nuka World. You have basically the leftover work of Quantum that was finished way too late.
Right.
You have the ghouls of Kitty Kingdom, who became this like survivor family and lost it all because they became feral, except for Oswald.
Right.
Who Rachel...
Because he's a glowing one?
Yes, he's the glowing one. Rachel, in her last note, encourages him to go out to the real world. Maybe he's special and he won't succumb to the affliction, and maybe he can make a life out there. You've got Safari Adventureland producing gator claws with this outrageous technology that no soda company should ever have. Like, let's just talk about the ridiculous logic of that. And then finally, John Caleb Bradburton basically, I would say he's picking out his belly button lint, but he doesn't have a body to pick out belly button lint with. He's just alone in a room for centuries. So, and the only other legacy is really you go around the wasteland finding the one thing that that would have out-survived him had he let himself die is Nuka Cola, the love and appreciation. I mean, the bottle caps are now money. So, I mean, he's kind of more immortal than even some of the founders of the United States at this point. Especially in parts that don't have things like the New California Republic.
Now, I do know that Bradburton can die?
Yes. So if we want to talk about, how all of this relates to Nuka Cola World DLC and really get into the spoiler territory, we can do that. And how you can resolve it as a player.
Spoilers.
More spoilers, because they were definitely full of spoilers here.
We have time.
So, Bradburton specifically, you find him because of the super mega fan Sierra
Petronova. We mentioned her last episode.
Yes, Sierra Petronova.
She's in Fallout 3.
Yes.
And in Nuka World.
And she's a super fan, and she actually, in Fallout 3, she has her museum. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to the Commonwealth, she's found Nuka World, she's obsessed with it, and she's trying to finish this clue game to basically get, I think it's the formula for Nuka Cola.
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah.
So you have to go around the park and find these Mr. Cappy clues throughout the whole park for her. Once you help...
Are there clues?
Yes, there's little clues throughout because it's like based on some puzzle. You got to chase down the puzzle. And once you finally get to a certain point, that's when you find out that not only does that you can get to Bradburn's office, but he's got the vault underneath.
No, I'm asking if there's good direct. Well, it is Fallout under Bethesda, so there's probably map markers, or they're not map markers.
They're just I'm not sure if they're marked on a map specifically in the game because I know some missions don't have that. What I do know is that in each section of the park is a clue that's a Mr. Cappy painted on a wall somewhere.
Okay.
So you got to find all of those, decode it. Sierra helps you with that. And then enthusiastically, you can follow the clues and you find not only Bradburn's office, but his secret vault. And then you find the head of Bradburn,
Right.
who is so ready to die.
Because it's been hundreds of years.
You can let him out of his misery if you want. Or Sierra can convince you to keep him alive and she keeps him company. And he's okay with that because he's so lonely.
That sounds arduous. Like just hunting for this picture
Yeah.
reminds me of hunting for the artifact symbols in Metroid Prime.
Right. It's arduous. I will say when it comes to the mechanics, you do get some good weapon stuff if you kill him because it unlocks a vault with a bunch of stuff that he doesn't care about anymore because he's now a head in a jar. Because of that, if you kill him, it's actually, it could be worth your time. Because the only other thing, if you instead don't kill him and you listen to Sierra, you get a unique outfit. As long as you do it right, she'll be okay with you killing Bradburn. She'll at first be really sad, and you tell him like, "Look, I needed to do it for him, not for you." And then she's like, "Oh yeah, that's fair." So, and she gets over it. She never gets, but she does get the recipe for Nuka Cola if you kill him too, because that's also locked up in the vault in his office. So,
Oh. Do we get a chance to read the recipe, or is it just an item we can't read?
It's just an item. It's just an item.
So we can't read it, but she can.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. When it comes to the gator claws, Sito in his Tarzan voice will help guide you through Safari Land to basically you've got to find where the body of Dr. Hine is to get the key to go into the cloning facility while you're fighting gator claws, which are basically as deadly, if not deadlier than death claws, which are the famous big enemy that
Right.
are apparently mutated chameleons.
Yes.
Yeah.
That part I did know.
Yeah. So basically, you got to fight through all that stuff.
Wasn't there another section? Wasn't there the Old West section or something too?
Dry Walk Gulch. Yeah. That one didn't have anything that keeps Nuka Cola Corporation alive.
Okay.
But that section, there's stuff to do, including an insinuation of some people getting murdered by bloodworms by hiding in the Mad Mulligan's mine cart
Oh, geez.
section. Yeah. They ran in there for safety and ended up getting eaten by bloodworms. Then, so you have that. So Safari Adventureland, you can stop the cloning machine and stop the gator claws, and you could also use it for yourself if you want.
Because I want more gator claws.
Yeah. And basically, you can tell Sito to hang around or leave Safari Adventureland because you're going to be giving that section to raiders anyway. That's why you're clearing out all these sections of the park because the raiders want more land.
They're all dead in my game, so what am I clearing it out for then?
Because Sito's kind of funny.
Okay.
Yeah, he's funny. It's such a cheesy little thing, and I'm glad that they added it. And when it comes to Quantum, it's a sad story that you just get to happen upon. It's not like with Kitty Kingdom, at least you can let Oswald know, especially if you come upon Rachel's body and get the tape to him, you can let him know, hey, go out in the world. I'm sorry you can't help your friends, but we got to clear this out. Your friends will never come back. And you can at least get some sort of resolution, or you could just kill him, obviously, because that's an option. But unfortunately, when it comes to Beverage Ears, it's just a really sad story. There's no real resolution to that. You just discover it and you want to.
I want to know where that is because I've played Nuka World twice now, and I don't know where that is.
There's the bottling plant, and I think if I remember correctly.
Is that in the park or is it outside the park?
The Secure Beverageer Lab, according to Nukapedia and plus the Vault, the Secure Beverageer Lab is a lab located in the Nuka Cola bottling plant in Nuka World. The lab is not accessible until the power is restored to Nuka World, so you've got to do that mission first. A computer in the bottling area of the World of Refreshment unlocks the door to an area that leads to an elevator down to the secure laboratory. The laboratory also has a back door leading directly to Kitty Kingdom, located in the employee tunnels just behind the reactor. The back door is unlocked using a terminal in the employee tunnels. So for anybody who wants to specifically happen upon the sad story of 4 corpses in a vault.
Right.
That's where it is. That's the most we'll get to being a player's guide in this podcast ever. Yeah, that's it. That's the history of Nuka Cola. I'll say it's the history of Nuka Cola Corporation. Obviously, Nuka Cola, there's other things.
Continue.
It does continue to find it. There's actually some games where people like make riffs on their own Nuka Cola flavors. You could still mix things up. You know, even the Raiders have their own flavors of what they mix things up with in order to, you know, have fun, I guess. And that's the history of Nuka. And it's funny because making this, it's like it wasn't until I got to the end, I was like, this is actually really freaking sad. Like, this is, I mean, yeah, late stage capitalism for the lose in this one.
Right. Well, that's Fallout in a nutshell.
I mean, like, it literally, the last surviving vestige of the whole company is really just a head in a jar by itself, staring at a wall.
Yeah.
Like, if that's not symbolism, I don't know what is, guys. Like,
Yeah.
what'd you think about it, Mystic?
I actually did learn some stuff, and I have to go play Nuka. I have to play Nuka World then.
Yeah.
I guess. That would make the most sense rather than just playing Fallout. So.
Well, there's still things you can do even if you've killed off all the raiders like you have.
Mm-hmm.
You can still find Cito, I'm sure.
Sounds like we'll have some fun with that next time then.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where we're gonna start then with Nuka World.
We'll figure it all out, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Hopefully our patrons will enjoy.
Hopefully they will.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much. We will catch you. Do you know what you're going to research next time?
I have an idea.
You have an idea? You don't want to tell me?
Nope.
Aw, guys, this is starting to get a little annoying. It's okay. I'll survive. All right. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.